Hello my dear students and welcome to Zenith Academy Online. Today we are going to study the topic photosynthesis. Now my dear children, all of you know that photosynthesis, just a second, let me take the laser pointer. Yeah. So photosynthesis in a way is the most significant life process. We know it provides food not only to the plant itself but to all animal life including humans as well. And also the life supporting free oxygen gas in the atmosphere for breathing. Okay, so we all know what is photosynthesis. The plants take in water from the soil through the roots, also carbon dioxide from the air, and in presence of sunlight, okay, the chlorophyll helps in production of glucose, which is the food that we all get, and the byproduct, that is oxygen gas, which is also very important for sustaining life. Okay, so you can see here light plus water plus CO2 gives sugar plus O2. Okay, and this food not only we or the plants take in but also the animals also consume this. Okay, and they need oxygen as well, so this oxygen is also provided by this process of photosynthesis. Now what is photosynthesis? Photosynthesis is the process by which living plant cells which contain chlorophyll, okay, living plant cells containing chlorophyll produce food substances like glucose and starch from carbon dioxide and water by using light energy. Plants release oxygen as the byproduct during photosynthesis. So water is taken up by the roots, okay, from soil. Carbon dioxide is taken in from the air. Okay. Sunlight falls on the pigment chlorophyll which is present in the leaf, and leaves in the process of photosynthesis produces carbohydrates and oxygen. Now what is the importance of photosynthesis? We all know. First, it is food for all. So photosynthesis is ultimately the source of energy and food for all living beings, directly for plants and indirectly for animals and humans who eat the plants or the plant eating animals. So directly it is a source for the plant itself, but for us and for other animals it is the indirect source of food. So this is the formula. Later on we will study the formula in detail. Then oxygen to breathe in. Photosynthesis is the only biological process which releases oxygen into the atmosphere, and oxygen supports all life on earth. No living being can remain alive without oxygen. Now my dear children, this is just a skeletal reaction. So the balance reaction we'll see later. So we know carbon dioxide plus water in the presence of chlorophyll and sunlight produces glucose and oxygen. Now let's talk about chlorophyll, the vital plant pigment chlorophyll, where chloro means green and phyll means leaf, is the green pigment which is found in plant's leaf surface. So you can see this is how it looks like. And this is one cell. If you see the chlorophyll very clearly, it is something like this. It is contained in a microscopic cell organelles called chloroplast. Okay, so there is a microscopic cell organelle. So inside the cell there are different cell organelles. Cell organelles are the organs of the cell, and that is known as chloroplast. So this is the diagram of the chloroplast. Chloroplasts are minute oval bodies bounded by double membrane, and their interior contains closely packed flattened sacs, that is thylakoids, arranged in piles, and the whole thing is known as grana, lying in a colorless ground substance called stroma. So here you can see this is granum. Each single one is known as thylakoid. The single flattened sac is known as thylakoids, and a lot of thylakoids, the pile of thylakoids is known as grana. Okay, a single pile is known as granum, and a lot of piles together is known as grana. Okay, lying in a colorless ground substance called stroma. So this substance inside, the colorless substance inside, this liquid inside is known as stroma. Now, ordinarily, there may be 40 to 50 chloroplasts in one particular cell. So, in one cell, how many chloroplasts are there? 40 to 50. So, you see here I have given a diagram of plant cell. So, in this plant cell, there are how many chloroplasts? Can you see here? These are the chloroplasts. Okay, and this is the diagram of one chloroplast. The labeling of chloroplast is important. You write this granum or grana, anything is okay. And this one sac is known as thylakoid. The whole thing is known as granum. Okay, and the colorless liquid is called stroma. There is inner membrane and outer membrane. Always remember that chloroplast has two membranes, inner and outer. Okay, so pigment chlorophyll is contained in the walls of thylakoid. Now, this is very, very important. Where is chlorophyll found? In the walls of thylakoid. So, whenever it is asked in the exams, especially for ICSE class 10, you have to write it is present in the walls of thylakoids in chloroplasts. Okay. So, you can see here I have made a circle to show you that this is a granum. Okay. One thylakoid. Okay. In the walls of the thylakoid, the chlorophyll is present in the walls. Okay. Now, it is a highly complex substance composed of carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen and magnesium. So, remember my dear children, magnesium is the main. Can you see this magnesium metal in between? Okay. So, this is the complex of magnesium where what are the other elements joined? The other elements are carbon, hydrogen, oxygen and nitrogen. Can you see? Carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen and oxygen. And the main metal inside the complex is magnesium. Okay, magnesium is the metal in the form of complex. Okay, and these are the other substances like carbon, hydrogen, oxygen and nitrogen. You don't have to remember this diagram. Just remember the constituents. I have given this diagram so that it is very clear to you and you remember the constituents very well. Now, chloroplasts are mainly contained in the mesophyll cells located between the upper epidermis and the lower epidermis, that is in palisade cells and spongy cells of leaves. These are also found in guard cells of stroma and in outer layers of young green stems. So, to explain you the position of chloroplast, I have given you this diagram. Can you see this upper epidermis? Okay, and this is the lower epidermis. So, these are the palisade tissues. Mesophyll cells are divided into palisade mesophyll and these are spongy mesophills. Can you see? These ones are spongy mesophills which have air space in between and the top layer has palisade mesophyll. So, maximum of your chloroplasts are contained in these mesophyll cells. And in palisade and spongy, the maximum number is there in palisade. Okay. So, and they are also found in guard cells. You know, these are the guard cells. Can you see the guard cells here? Where you have the opening stoma. Okay. So, in guard cells also chlorophyll is found. But maximum chlorophyll is found in palisade mesophyll and spongy mesophyll. Now, there are more than 5 lakh chloroplasts per square millimeter of leaf surface. Okay, so you can imagine per square millimeter, 1 millimeter is so small. So in 1 square millimeter, that is millimeter square, if I draw a box of 1 millimeter by 1 millimeter, in that 5 lakh chloroplasts are present. Okay, now there are 9 types of chlorophyll, my dear children. 2 out of these, that is chlorophyll A and chlorophyll B, are best known and most abundant. I have just given a picture for reference. You don't have to learn them. Just remember that there are total how many chlorophylls? 9. Now, the chlorophyll absorbs light at both the ends of the visible spectrum, that is blue and red. Okay, it absorbs blue and red and reflect away the green light. That is why chlorophyll appears green, because it is reflecting green. It is not absorbing green. It is able to reflect green, but it is absorbing what? Blue and red. Okay. So when sunlight falls on it, the whole figure falls on it, only green light. So this band is what? that is reflected. Otherwise, both the ends, that is the blue end and the red end, is being absorbed. Okay, that is why we see different shades of green in the leaf. Now let's talk about sunlight and chlorophyll. What's the relationship? So chlorophyll is highly sensitive to light. So too much light may destroy it. Okay. So it is highly sensitive to light, although it requires sunlight, but too much light may destroy the chlorophyll. However, the formation of chlorophyll itself depends on the exposure of plant to light. The grass, now this is very important, look here very carefully children. The grass growing in the shade under a stone. Okay, so if there is a big stone and the grass is growing under the shade where the sunlight is not able to reach, okay, then that grass turns yellowish due to non-formation of new chlorophyll and due to disintegration of the older one in the absence of light. So even if the light is absent, then the chlorophyll will disintegrate, okay, and also the new chlorophyll will not form. Whereas if you give too much light also, then also it is highly sensitive and this may get destroyed by it. So an optimum amount of sunlight is required for the proper functioning of chlorophyll. Now see here, regulation of stomatal opening for letting in carbon dioxide. We all know that during the day the stomata opens up. Okay, so when it opens up, the plant is able to take in carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and release oxygen. Okay, now how does it open and close? Let us study this very carefully. Now watch here very carefully, dear children. This inner layer is slightly thicker than the outside layer. Okay, inner layer is thicker where it opens to stoma. This layer is thicker and this layer is thin. So when the plant absorbs water from the roots, the water comes in through the roots, then the stem, and from the veins it enters the cells. Now from the neighboring cells, okay, when water is drawn in, this becomes turgid and the turgor pressure. And since this is the thin wall, the water enters from here. Okay, this is the thin wall, and when it expands, when water fills in, the turgor pressure will push this and this will arch more. Okay, the outer layer will arch more because from here it is absorbing a lot of water and it will arch more. So if the outer layer will arch more, it will form shape like this and you get a hole here. Okay, stroma, and through this opening the gases are exchanged. Now during the night when there is not enough water in the leaf, okay, then this layer being thinner will give out water to the neighboring cells, and when it gives out water to the neighboring cells, what happens, my dear children? It becomes flaccid, it becomes loosened and the opening gets closed like this. Okay, it becomes normal flaccid and the turgidity is lost, and you see now this is not arched anymore. Okay, so this way stroma gets closed. Now in the opening and closing of stomata, dear children, there are two theories about the opening and closing of stomata. The first one is potassium ion concentration theory, which is the recent one, which is the recent accepted one, or the new or modern theory, you can say potassium ion concentration. And there is a sugar concentration theory, which is an old theory. So let us talk about both these theories. So only new theory is being asked in the examination, but you should also know the old theory. That is why I have given up the old theory as well. Now let's talk about the new theory, that is the K+, that is potassium ion concentration theory. Now according to the recent this is K+, okay, there is a misprint. According to the recent K+ ion concentration theory, the stomatal opening and closing depend on what? It depends on generation of potassium ion gradient. Now what is this potassium ion gradient and how it is generated? Let us talk about it. During the daytime, okay, the chloroplasts in the guard cells photosynthesize. Okay, so in the daytime, I told you already that guard cells also contain chloroplast, right? So in the guard cells, the chloroplasts are there. So photosynthesis will take place and it leads to the production of energy in the form of ATP molecule. We know that glucose is formed, okay, oxygen is formed and energy is formed. So ATP is formed. Now this ATP is used to actively pump the potassium ion of the adjacent cells into the guard cells. I have already explained you active transport in my previous lesson, right? So you remember that in active transport, use of energy was there. So this ATP is now used to actively pump the potassium ions of the adjacent cells into the guard cells. Always remember, in the active transport, what happens? The ions will, or the solute will move from its lower concentration to higher concentration, correct? So in the adjacent cells, if potassium ions are there, even if in low concentration, the ATP is used to drive it into the guard cells. Now increased potassium ion concentration in the guard cells make them hypertonic. We know what are hypertonic solution. I have already explained you in my last lecture. Hypertonic solution means the concentration of the solute or of whatever we are talking about, especially solute, not water, is more. If the concentration of solute is more or salts or ions is more, it is known as hypertonic solution. So now if it is hypertonic, means these ions are more and water is less, correct? So more water from the adjacent cells is drawn in and the cells become turgid and they move outwards to open out to the stomatal pore. I told you they arch outwards so that the stomatal pore opens up. Now the reverse happens at night. K plus ions leak out. Leak out means it goes to the adjacent cells again, thus reducing the turgor of the guard cells and the stomatal pore closes. So I hope this is clear. I'll just go back again. What happens? During the daytime, the guard cells will photosynthesize because it has chloroplast, and this leads to the production of energy molecules, that is ATP. Now these ATPs actively pump the potassium ions of the adjacent cells into the guard cells and thus making the guard cells hypertonic. Hypertonic means now potassium ion concentration is more, water is less. So if water is less, water will move from high concentration to low concentration. So water will move from more water from the adjacent cells is drawn in the guard cells and they become more turgid and move outwards. They arch outwards to open the stomatal pore, and the reverse happens at night. I hope this is very clear to all of you. Now let's move on to sugar concentration theory. Okay, so according to the old sugar concentration theory, during the daytime the guard cells begin photosynthesis. We know guard cells begin photosynthesis and the sugar or the glucose produced during the process increases the osmotic pressure. So in the first theory we were talking about ATP and then ATP drawing in the potassium ions and then turgor pressure increases. Here we are talking about sugar. The presence of sugar or glucose increases and hence osmotic pressure increases, which draws in water from the adjoining cells due to endosmosis. Now here there is endosmosis. Endosmosis is what? When water comes inside. Endosmosis, okay, diffuses inside. Okay, now why will water diffuse? Because see, glucose is produced, so the guard cells become more concentrated in glucose and less concentrated in water. So water will move from high concentration to low concentration. So easily without the use of energy it will move, water will move. Hence the guard cells become turgid and bulge outwards due to the thin outer wall, thus widening the stomatal opening lying in between. Is that clear to you? Now as the stomata open, the diffusion of gases in and out begins for fulfilling the need of photosynthesis and for allowing transpiration. Okay, we all know transpiration. I have already explained transpiration in detail. Now closing of stomata, if for any reason the water content of the leaf is falling short, the water is drawn out of the guard cells. We know when at night when the photosynthesis is not happening, at that time what happens? Water is less because water is not being absorbed. Okay, water is less and so the stomata or the guard cells give out water to the neighboring cells due to exosmosis and making them flaccid. As a result, their inner thick walls straighten to closing the stomata. Now, my children, for the process of photosynthesis, it is very important to understand this diagram. So, mesophyll cells, I already told you what are mesophyll cells: palisade tissue and spongy cells. Palisade cells and spongy cells. You can see this one on upper epidermis is known as palisade, and these ones are known as spongy mesophills. Okay, so in the mesophyll cells in a leaf are these are the principal centers of this activity, of photosynthesis. Now, during daytime, when sunlight falls on the leaf, the light energy is trapped by the chlorophyll of the upper layers of mesophyll. Okay, that is these upper layers, palisade mesophyll. Okay, especially the palisade cell. This energy is utilized in chemical process involved in the manufacture of food, where the raw material used are carbon dioxide and water. We know that maximum photosynthesis will take place in palisade mesophyll because it is lying upwards. No, can you see? So it is very easy to absorb sunlight and carbon dioxide. So in the palisade tissue, chlorophyll is already present. It absorbs carbon dioxide. Water is drawn. See, water comes in like this through the veins of the leaf. Okay. Now let's talk about carbon dioxide and water. So carbon dioxide from the atmosphere enters the leaf how? By diffusion down a concentration gradient. That is higher concentration outside the leaf and less concentration inside. So that is why it moves from high concentration to low concentration through stomata. It enters through stomata. Now water from the soil is taken up by the roots, sent up through the stem, and finally to the leaves, where it is distributed in the mesophyll tissues. So if you see here, from the stomata the carbon dioxide enters. Okay, carbon dioxide enters through here, water enters through here, and sunlight falls maximum on this upper epidermis. Okay. Now this is the chemical equation that you have to learn for ICSE class 10. This is the chemical equation you have to learn. 6 molecules of CO2 plus 12 molecules of water. In the earlier classes, we have been studying 6 and 6 for balancing, but now you have to remember this. It is 12 water molecules here and 6 water molecules here. So it becomes actually 6 here, right? But you have to write this particular reaction. Watch here very carefully. 6 carbon dioxide molecules reacts with 12 water molecules in the presence of chlorophyll and sunlight to form 1 molecule of glucose. You can see C6H12O6. 6 molecules of water and 6 molecules of oxygen. Okay. So the glucose molecule is a simple sugar readily soluble in water. The 6 molecules of water liberated at the end of the process are those that are reformed during a chain of reactions. So these are reformed during this chain of reactions and not out of the original ones. It is not that 6 molecules of here are remaining. It is reformed. Okay. So learn this reaction very well. So they will ask you how many water molecules are required in producing 1 molecule of glucose. So you will say 12 water molecules are required and 6 CO2 is required to form 1 molecule of sugar. They can also ask you, if 1 molecule of sugar is formed, how much oxygen is released in the atmosphere. You will say 6 molecules of oxygen is released and also 6 molecules of water vapor is produced. Okay. So this was all about my today's lecture. Okay. Be tuned to Zenith Academy online and do subscribe to understand this process of photosynthesis in my coming lectures. Thank you, my dear students, and have a great day.